Hey, storytellers! If you're still juggling Word docs, sticky notes, and 47 browser tabs to keep your story straight, it's time to simplify your writing life. Meet Scrivener, the writing software built by writers for writers. Whether you're drafting a novel, a picture book, or even a dissertation, Scrivener helps you organize your scenes, research, and revisions all in one beautifully structured workspace.
Many of our guests on the Storyteller Shelf podcast have raved about Scrivener and how it completely changed their writing flow. You can move chapters around with a click, store your notes right next to your draft, and even set word count goals that actually keep you motivated.
Curious? Check out our affiliate link. It helps support the show at no extra cost to you. And let us know if you give it a try. We'd love to hear how it helps your writing process.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Storyteller Shelf podcast. It's Jackie here with Teresa again, and we have brought you an incredible segment that is rarely talked about. We are talking about poetry today. And yes, we have brought you an expert. Heidi is here. She is a poet, an author, and more. Heidi, would you please, for our listeners, tell us more about yourself, how you became a poet, and what you're doing right now?
Okay, first of all, how much time do we have now? That could take a while, so I'll give you the short version. So I'll just start really quick. As a child, I was an avid reader. I loved books. I loved silly words. I loved nonsense. I fell in love with language, I guess, at an early age. My mom says that when I was a toddler, she had an old 45 record, and it played the song, the Hawaiian War Chant. I don't know if you know that, but it was silly. And I'm gonna really be brave here and sing a few lines for you. I'm not a singer, but it went like this. Wiki, 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 whack. Wiki, 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 whack. My mom says I would just roll on the floor in fits of laughter and wanted to play it over and over again. So I guess I had, what is it, a high threshold or a low? I don't know how that works, but I had a threshold for humor and funny words. Another experience, what I remember as a kid loving language, first of all, was the poem When Daddy Fell into the Pond. Do you know that classic? My dad wore a tuxedo to work sometimes, and we had lakes and ponds by our house, a lot of them. And I heard the poem When Daddy Fell into the Pond, and I just imagined him coming up with, the duckweed all over him, and it just cracked me up. So I fell in love with children's writing again as a grown-up with a mom, and when I was reading to my boys. And there were some books I read or poems I read, I go, "Well, that's pretty good." And then there were others I said, "How did that ever get published? I think I could do better." So that was my kickstart, and then I had to learn how to do it all. I learned on my own. I didn't go to school to learn poetry. It was just self-taught.
That's awesome. I actually have heard that song. My mom also played that because my late mother was one of those where she liked the classics, from like the 40s and 50s, and she would always play like the music like that. And it would always make me laugh as well. It's such nostalgia when you think about it, and it brings you into like a warm place. And I think poetry in itself, you're using the five senses a lot of times when you're writing and when you're even reading poetry. And it brings back when you're a kid. And that being said, when you're writing poetry for kids, what makes great children's poems from an editorial or publishing perspective? What magazines and publishers are looking for?
Um, Editors are always looking for a fresh voice, a new approach to something, whether it's through a humorous twist, a clever way to express a concept, strong language that appeals to kids, and of course, age appropriateness is a great theme. I had I have a poem here that I thought uniqueness. Remember, I just said a unique voice. I have kept this magazine since 2022. It is Ladybug. This amazing poet. I don't know if Mickey Wright is male or female. I don't know who that is, but took this idea. She or he sent in 3 haikus that, number one, they're haikus. Number two, they rhyme. And number three, they're a riddle, and they're all based on a theme. And I thought is clever. I mean, no wonder this didn't get passed over. This was probably picked up the minute they found it. Kept it. When I teach adult poets who want to break into magazines, clever, think clever, and that is one of the best examples I can give you right now. I love that. So good.
That's fantastic because I think a lot of us who aren't well versed in poetry, we all know a haiku. We learned it in school. It's one of the starter poetry structures that you play around with. And when you're having a revival and you want to go back into poetry as an adult, it's sometimes good to start with those basics again that we were taught in the classroom to kind of jog your memory and keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
And with that being said, we are going to talk about craft, writing craft, one of our favorite topics here, but kind of a hard question. We're putting you on the spot, Heidi. So, what are some common mistakes that you see newer poets make when they're writing for young readers in particular? And how can we improve?
Well, I've made them all myself. So this is an easy question for me. I look back on old work and I go, yeah, well, oh my gosh. Um, so poets, a lot of times they use didactic language. They look down on the child. They're not playful. They don't have clunky rhythm. Maybe the rhyme is off a lot. Some editors are more fussy than others with near rhyme versus perfect rhyme. Nice twist at the end. It's kind of boring or bland. Those are the poems that are going to get rejected really quickly. So the way to improve is to just do the opposite. Use playful language. Learn how to make the rhythm. Learn the 4 basic rhythms at least. I'll show you some or share with you some ideas, and then read a lot. A lot of learning can be done just through reading. When I was starting out, I would take, and I still try to do this as best I can. I would take 20 to 30 poetry books home every week, plus a stack of magazines, and look for the poems in the magazines. And when I found poems I liked, I'd type them out and I'd actually, mark the accents, or I'd tap it out with the meter out with my finger or my toe. But it's just a matter of learning it. So mistakes are easy to make, but they're also, with a little study and practice, you can improve. Anybody can improve. If I can do it, anybody can do it. That's all I can say.
I love this. And I love that you're mentioning common theme that we have seen with our guests, reading. As authors from poetry to any genre, that reading as authors will help you improve your craft. And I think that is something that is like the most important thing as an author. And we're going to pivot into how poetry can connect into STEAM or STEM. And with science, technology, engineering, art, math, can you share how you weave the poetry with the STEAM themes and why it's important for readers?
I love weaving STEAM themes. Say that 3 times fast. I love weaving STEAM themes into my poetry. It just makes learning so fun. It takes maybe a complicated subject that's over a first grader's head, but you kind of condense it down and bring it in. I think of it like a taco, and you fill it with rhyme and rhythm and story and emotion and language and fun, and then it makes it more memorable and accessible. And if children do memorize the poem that is a STEAM poem, it's a fun way to spark their interest in learning more about that poem. So this is from the collection, The Poetry Friday Anthology for Science by Sylvia Vardell and Janet Wong. And it's a collection of poems for, what grade is it? I think up to K through 5. And in this book, they have the poem, and then they have teacher tips on the opposite page, which makes it very easy to teach. And then they also have Student Guide, which is a thinner book with just the poems. And so I'm going to talk about Sylvia again later, so that's why I'm talking about her now a little bit. But math and poetry. I'm going to read this poem and tell me what you think. Maybe I'll put my readers on so I don't goof up. Hold on 1 second. I pour some juice into my cup. 8 fluid ounces, I drink it up. That's 16 tablespoons, good stuff. But the juice is not enough. I mix a pint of lemonade, the pink kind that my grandma made. That's 16 ounces, 2 cold cups. The lemonade is not enough. I chug a quart of chocolate milk, and not one drop of milk is spilt. That's 32 ounces, 4 cold cups, 2 pints of milk. Still not enough. I swig a gallon of iced tea. That's 16 cups of tea for me. I reach my peak capacity. 8 pints, 4 quarts, all gone. Oh no! Excuse me, please, I gotta go. And this is actually one of my favorite poetry videos, which we'll talk about later on my blog, because the student who created this visual for this poem made the toilet flush at the end. I thought that was hilarious. Hilarious. I loved it.
I love potty humor in kids' books and poems, and I know it's such a hated and debated kind of theme, especially by publishers, but I love it. I have to use the bathroom, if there's a fart, I don't care what anyone says. I've never met a kid that doesn't love that. So whenever I pick up a kid's book, yes, I think of me when I was a kid, but I always think of my nephew who is 10 years old, and he's the perfect age for that, and I can see him loving that poem and picking up the rhythm of it and the rhyme. Numbers kind of make sense to him, and I think actually listening to this would make him more excited to read because he has the numbers aspect, then he'll be learning the math aspect, but most of all, there's the laughing aspect, which I think makes it way up higher shooting star level for a kid. If not, if I showed him, here's a pint, here's an ounce, that kid is gone, like he's asleep before I started talking.
And if a child happens to memorize it, it's useful down the road in the kitchen. How much is 2 cups of milk and, yeah, your liquid measurements. It's a concept you'll learn anyway in school and get tested on. So you might even ace the test because you know this silly poem.
It's practical because kids know, especially in the USA, they know pink lemonade, they know chocolate milk. Those are relatable drinks for them instead of something completely foreign that they might not pick up on. So yeah, we can recycle this in the kitchen.
Yeah. And it's a reminder to always flush.
My own children would probably find this humorous as well because they like now it's not poetry, but it's, when they were a little younger, they liked the Captain Underpants. And so it's something that they're gonna remember and it's funny. And I don't, it's kind of a common theme with us as humans. Like whenever we find something funny, we're gonna remember it. And so that is gonna help them. And I love how you said it. Like, I wish I had had this poem when I was teaching the measurements with like cups and ounces and all this. It was more of like, okay, let's just try to remember it. And I was pulling out stuff from the kitchen and that kind of thing. But I think that they would have found it better using or having a poem like this because then they would remember it more. And like you said, and they'll remember to flush. Yeah. This is perfect. We're going to make sure that we link that poem so everybody can see it.
Okay.
And it'll probably teach some adults too about conversions in the kitchen. It's okay, guys. We accept you. So you're welcome to memorize the poem yourself as an adult. It's okay. I probably will too. I've forgotten some math along the way. All right, Heidi, we have the question that I know a lot of people are waiting for. You have published in so many iconic magazines. I would like to ask you, one, can you tell us what those magazines are? And two, tell us about the submission process to magazines. How does that work?
As a new writer, somebody gave me a bit of good advice when I was starting out, and they said, you want to write books, write for magazines first because it'll be easier to get in. First of all, magazines need regular material on a regular basis every month, new stuff. A book publisher publishes, 10, 30, whatever books a year. So your chances of getting published are better. You get some experience working with an editor. Even if you're rejected, you might get feedback from your work. This is a great poem, but it's not a good fit for us. Try again. Encouragement, even if if you bomb, you bomb. But of course, you're hoping you don't. You've been better at sending the best of your work. So there's a lot of benefits to starting with magazines first. I took that advice and I took it one step further back and I thought, well, Sunday school papers need work, new things, new materials every week. So while I was also doing magazines and Sunday school papers, my first sale was in a Sunday school paper. It was a little inspirational thing, a couple poems here. There are a few of them. Then kind of got more into magazines. I don't know how many magazines per se. I know Highlights has almost 200 of my poems. And I think all in told with this and that, I might have close to 500 poems published. Some have been purchased but not published yet. They're waiting. They have to divvy it out over the time. There were some boom days back when I was doing magazines. Now I have to say, just a cautionary note, there's not as many, but there are still some iconic ones. I'm going to show you and then I'll give you some talk about the process. So we call them the Bug magazines. There's 4 of them. I only have 3 samples. The Bug magazine is Babybug, which is 0 to 3. Ladybug, which is 4 and 6. Spider I don't have, and that's in the Bug magazine group, and that is 6 to 9. And then there's Cricket for 9 to 14. So we call those the Bug magazines, and that's from Cricket. And then the other iconic, long-lasting, very popular magazines, who hasn't heard of Highlights, right? Well, Highlights, they've been around for, I think, 30, 40, 50 years. I forgot. I should have looked it up. I used to know and I forgot. So Highlights is for the older kids, and over the years, then they started gravitating toward younger kids with High Five, 4 and 5-year-olds, and then like Babybug, Hello, which is 0 to 3. And they have these cute little poems, and you'd be surprised. Many of them are STEAM-based. They're teaching children, concepts at an early age. There's other magazines that are not as popular, but they're still out there. And some of them offer their theme list online so that I'm a new writer, I don't know what to write about. Look at those magazines that have theme lists, and maybe you know something about dinosaurs or penguins or something, and you'll say, oh, I could write about that. And then you already have a shoe and a quick way to, instead of sitting there. Anyway, so you asked me about the process. Okay, number 1, research the magazine. Find out what age group do you want to write for. You want to write for toddlers, or are you more for teenagers? You can do your search online. The old way of doing things was to get the market book. They're still out there, and there's still several of these companies that make them. I like that because you can write in it. You don't have to make your copy online. It's a little more practical. But so you research, find the right fit. You look for the age range. You look for the themes. You find out the poetry length that they want. Keep in mind that magazines have white space, little pages, and they normally don't want long poems. They usually have requests for poems that are 12 to 16, maybe 20 lines, and then that's it. So if your poem is long and they have a requirement, don't go over it. They're not happy to take things that people aren't, complying. Rule number 1 is follow the guidelines, research and follow. When you want to get started, you keep your audience in mind. Remember how engaging and playful that poem was, and think about thought-provoking. It doesn't have to be silly or happy, slap happy. It could be thought-provoking. It could be serious, on a serious subject. Rhyme and rhythm and humor are big pluses when you write for kids. It really does make a difference. It makes it sparkle, really fun stuff. And really, if you think about it, there are really no taboo topics. When I started out, I was so surprised when I saw a book come out called Dirty Laundry Pile. And I thought, how kid-friendly is that? That sounds like a book for grandma, And then you think about it, well, a washing machine is a machine, so it's steam, right? A poem about a vacuum cleaner is really cute in here. When I read it to my students, I have them make the slurp. I have slurp, slurp, and then my burp. I have them burp as the machine is picking up stuff. It's sucking up all the food. I'll read it to you. The Vacuum Cleaner's Revenge by Patricia Hubble. I munch, I crunch, I zoom, I roar, I clitter clack across the floor. I swallow twigs, I slurp dead bugs, I suck the cat hair from the rugs. My stomach is full of dirt and dust. I gulp your leftover pizza crust. That's a tiresome life, all work and no play. I think I'll swallow you today. There's also a little emphasis in reading sometimes too. Makes it fun. Keep your audience in mind. Follow the guidelines. Oh my gosh, that's so important. Look for those And then after you write your cover letter, you can go online to see how to do that. This market book will give you some tips on how to write cover letters too. Then you submit it. These days, it's not so much by snail mail anymore. It's by submittable. So then that's kind of easy because then you don't have to print it all out. That's a plus. And then you can look it over. You can see where you sent it. Helps you keep track too when you have your own account. It's free. And then if you're successful, yay, your online magazine may publish you in a couple weeks, maybe a month. Print magazines, often months. I have waited 5-6 years sometimes, but that's maybe unusual. And then if you receive a rejection, you go back, you look at your poem again. Maybe read it again to somebody. What do you think's wrong? Is there improvement? Is it herky jerky? Sometimes after leaving a poem alone for a while, you go back and you hear it yourself. You don't realize that when you first, get it printed out. So then you look it over. Can you revise it? Can you tweak it? Make it better? Can you improve it? Then you write it up, start all over. You submit it again to your number 2 choice and you wait. It's all part of the process.
If you're writing a cover letter for a magazine, and let's say you want to write it for a poetry, obviously it's going to be somewhat different than if it's a short story or like just in general. If you could walk us through the difference between the two.
This episode of the Storyteller Chef podcast is brought to you by Harney and Sons Fine Teas, a perfect companion to every story. Whether you're reading, writing, or just enjoying a quiet moment to yourself, Harney and Sons offers a beautiful selection of teas to elevate this experience. From classic blends to unique finds, every cup is crafted with care, just like the stories we love to share. Shop harney.com/discount/storyteller, and Storyteller is in all caps. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, for fiction or nonfiction, a lot of times what they want that magazines don't want, makes it more complicated, is they want 3 comparable books that are out there. Then you got to do that exercise, I guess they might want more of a bio. They might want to know more about you. When I had an agent for a short time, my agent said, I have to increase my online presence. So maybe your editor would want to know, well, how many copies is this lady? Is this the only book this lady's ever going to write? I mean, was it just like a one-time, one-hit wonder, or if it's even a wonder? So yes, if you have a magazine credits, you can definitely put that in there as a selling point.
It definitely helps a lot because I think as authors, we get overwhelmed with the idea of writing a cover letter. And once you are accepted by a magazine, can you walk us through what happens and what kind of payment can poets expect and how long does it take for them to see their work in print?
Okay. After a poem is accepted by a magazine, you'll get a notification, probably an email, not a phone call. The phone call might come with a book, but not with an email, sorry. So the first thing that the editor will say is, we love your poem. Maybe the editor will say, but we would like a few tweaks. Would you be willing to look at this closing line again? Is there something you could do to make it better or whatever? Suggestions. There is one company that sometimes doesn't ask, just goes ahead and changes it. So I have a few friends that sometimes get a little tiffed or whatever the word is because they weren't asked. But most of the time you're asked. So if you tweak it and you answer right, you give them, if you have 2 ideas, share 2 ideas. Maybe they'll like one more than the other. The second thing that they'll send to you is a contract, and you'll read it over, and it'll tell you, do they want to take all rights? When I was a new writer, I shied away from submitting to magazines that take all rights. And that still is not my first priority. I would rather sell up to somebody that I could reuse my own poem. And so you'll look at the contract. If it's, and you'll know it you should know that ahead of time if you've done your homework with. So your first priority would be to look that up. And then, okay, I don't want to sell to all rights. I'm going to look for a magazine, they call it first rights. I'm going to look for magazines that accepts first rights. That means you still have ownership. So if a book publisher sees your poem in a magazine and you have first rights, they will call you up and say, can we use your poem in our book anthology, and we'll pay you. If you don't have the rights, they'll call the magazine company and the magazine gets the payments. You would be out of a little money, and which is why you would prioritize it. And then if you're lucky, you might be told the publication date. Some of them say we're so far out there, we have no idea. It could be 2 years. They might just tell you that right up front. But if they have a date, it's nice to know that you can look forward to something like that. And then down the road, some of the magazines will actually send you a copy before it's published. So you can look at it and give it another check, and you'll see the illustrations that go with it. You'll know who the illustrator is, which sometimes is so cool because you think, oh, I love this artwork. And then the last thing is payment. Some online magazines often pay zero, but it's another credential, so you can prioritize. In some cases with print magazines, they don't pay, but they'll give you a complimentary copy or two. Maybe you could ask for 3 or 4. If you have a big family, you could ask. And if you're talking money, the lowest I've seen is like $5. Sometimes it's a few cents per word, $10, maybe up to 100. If you have a lot of work with them or you have a book out, maybe you'll get 100 or more. Could be more than that. So it just all depends on their budget, who they are, and I guess in part who you are as a writer, what you've done.
Do you need an agent to submit to magazines?
No, that's easy. No, you don't.
We always have some librarians and educators listening in who want to integrate poetry into lessons. So do you have any tips for writing poems that really, really work well for classrooms, especially to support STEAM or literacy?
So let's start with the younger generation, the little toddler age group. If you're early childhood education teacher, maybe you teach Mother Goose. A lot of teachers, a lot of classrooms, they're not teaching old-fashioned Mother Goose anymore, so this might be losing its power, but I hope it doesn't totally dissolve out. But Mother Goose is a great way to start with rhyme, and then there are books like Builder Goose, which is adorable. I wish I had written this. It's by Bonnie Ashman. I love her work. And these are all to the tune of different Hey Diddle Diddle, Cat and the Fiddle. Do you know the bulldozer? Do you know the bulldozer, the bulldozer, the bulldozer? Do you know the bulldozer? The first one at the site. And I mean, it's so adorable. I have a board book copy and I have a regular book copy. I love this so much. So starting with that, there are so many. Can you write parodies? Parodies are a great way for new aspiring poets to jump in because that melody is already in your head, that rhythm is already in your head, and then it makes the writing easy until you learn yourself the 4 basic, and it just is a great foundation. So this book by Joan Bransfield Graham, which I have used, I have 2 copies of this book, 2 hard copy and soft paperback. This is about the 3 forms of water, solid, liquid, gas. Love, love, love it. My favorite poem in this book, again, which I've used multiple times, is Popsicle. So when you're writing for kids and you're trying to write STEAM, you pick a STEAM topic, whether it's gravity, dinosaur, the water cycle, fractions, whatever, and then you highlight the vocabulary. I always make a word list so that I have, and if I can't find one, I'll Google for just words. I'll put them on the paper. Action verbs and concrete nouns really give bulk to your diet. It's like orange juice concentrate. It's so good. So this is a good example of a STEAM topic, and listen to the language. That's another thing that poets will need to kind of keep in mind. Listen to the language. Popsicle, popsicle, tickle tongue fun. Lixicle, stixicle, please don't run. Dripsicle, slipsicle, melt, melt tricky. Stopsicle, popsicle, hands all sticky. Isn't that adorable? And she goes on with ice cubes and poems about steam and liquid. There are so many. One of my favorite STEAM poems is Encyclopedia by Douglas Florian. If you're a poet who likes to write short poems, maybe rhyming, maybe not, favorites is The Daddy Longlegs. Here's your science right here. And look how short that is and how non-threatening that is for a reluctant reader. There's a lot of white space on there. And now Douglas does his own artwork too. So there's your spider. And he's done all these books, Mammalbelia, Encyclopedia. And this poem goes like this. Daddy, Daddy-o, how'd you get those legs to grow so very long and lean in size? From spider aerobic exercise? Do you drink milk? or chew on cheese. And by the way, where are your knees? Oh, daddy, daddy-o, how'd you get those legs to grow? So playful, so fun. If you're a history buff, maybe you can tie into a STEAM like Verla Kay did with Orphan Train. This book is about a train, but it's also about the children who rode the train. And I love Verla Kay's book because she uses something called terse verse, and it's really choppy little sentences. Often you see this with board books, and it's a gripping story. Harold, David, frightened eyes, Lucy rocking lullabies. And it's a story about the parents who are sick and shaking and deathly ill, and then they pass away, and the children go on the train. But it is a train book, so you can hook STEAM, and now you're getting more bang for your buck. You're getting poetry, you're getting history, and you're getting technology, engines and mechanics in there. You can write math poems if you are a math whiz and you did great in high school, and you can even addition, simple addition math poems, Math Fables by Greg Tang, and the artwork that supports, I'm not going to read, but supports the math poems. Many, many different ways to do it. You can figure out your own way of doing it. So listen to the language and make it playful. Those are all winners. Can you do it? Who wants to try? Let's try.
Yes, we can do it.
Yeah, right?
Heidi, you mentioned very, very briefly about non-rhyming poetry. And I feel like a lot of successful poems that at least stick in your mind well from when you're a kid to adulthood have rhyme. But can you tell us what your experience is with poems that are free form and maybe unusual formatting that don't rhyme? Are those successful? Are they a little less wanted? Or how should people who have that style approach publication?
Yeah, they are definitely necessary. And I would say that in most cases, perhaps that would be for a little bit older child, maybe 12 and up or so, depending on the reader, of course. There's all different variations on that. But it's also a very great way to access a child's mind, more free flowing. Children who are learning to write may find that less difficult. Now, in my case, they say that a poetry with a rhyme is like playing tennis with a net. If you take the net away, you have free verse. So a lot of people, then the ball goes all over the place and it doesn't come off always well. So again, my advice is to read that style poetry. Maybe if there's a poetry teacher at your junior college or college that you could look into, there's how-to books. I would look into it and become the best free verse writer that you can be. But you also kind of have to learn how to do it, just like with rhyme and meter. Mhm.
I really appreciate all of this. I especially love that you have the STEAM and STEM and that you have this amazing contest. Can you share more information about your poetry contest?
The STEAM Powered Poetry Contest invites older students to create short, engaging educational videos for younger audiences, all inspired by poetry with STEAM themes. It's a creative way to blend the arts and sciences while building communication and digital storytelling. Best of all, it's free to enter and there are cash prizes. So it really is a win-win situation where students are exposed to poetry. They can use that as a prompt to use their digital skills. And then, even if they don't win, their poem might still be accepted to be put on the blog to be used as a resource for teachers. That's the short version.
I've already shared this with my homeschooling community and they're excited about it. But what inspired you to create this?
For one, the books I just shared with you that were so wonderfully expressive in language and so forth that portrayed topics that kids have to learn in school anyway and just make it more fun. That was really a big, important thing. Sylvia Vardell, remember I showed you her book? She's actually was at the time a professor at the Texas Women's University. And at the time, her undergrads, she had them take a poem that they chose and create a video about it. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. Sylvia, I love that. It sparked the idea to do a contest with that format. Well, the next year I went ahead and started the contest, and Sylvia let her students take poems that I had, curated. And one by one, they were making the poems, sending them to me. They won the prizes. That Thirsty Measures was one of them. And I wanted to do it again and again. I built up the website so it made it more easier for bigger audiences to come in and fill it out. Boom, boom, boom. So I would credit her for inspiring me with the idea, number one, to introduce the concept of students creating poem videos. I was hooked, and it came to spark that idea of a national contest to celebrate students' creativity through video and verse. Number two was Lee Bennett Hopkins, who was a wonderful poet of 100 and an anthologist, 100 at least 100 anthologies, many of them STEAM. This is one of them. Museum would be art. Of course, there's science museum, different museums, but there's poems in here about museums. And I was privileged and honored to be asked to write some poems for his anthologies before he passed. So Lee Bennett Hopkins also believed in the idea of STEAM topics. And those two books, those two people in particular, and many, many books that were STEAM, they made me excited about trying it.
We are so excited, overjoyed about this poetry contest, and we will be putting more information about it in the descriptions wherever you are listening in or watching. So please look out for the link to Heidi's website so that you can go check it out, get involved. And Heidi, I know you have a pretty incredible team working with you this year for the contest. Do you want to talk a little bit more about who's joining forces with you?
I'd be happy to. I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, this is not a one-woman show. I mean, I'm the one who maybe directs it a little bit, but I have great support. Number one, when I first started out, Kimberly Hutmaker was a homeschool mom who had written, I think, 20 or 30 books. Some of them were works for hire, but still, that's not all of them. And some of them were STEAM. And I thought, and she doesn't even live close. She's like you two live for farther distances. We don't live as far apart as you two do. But so Kimberly was with me when we began, and she's still with me. With every poetry video, we have classroom resources. We have 5 activities, 5 recommended books on the subject, and a craft, and often usually a special craft. So Kim writes up many of the book lists on the theme and the activities because she was a homeschool mom. Then along came Luann Brown, a former art teacher who's very involved with SCBWI, is a poet and a writer herself, has a book out. She joined us, and she does a special craft called Doodaloos because her name's Luann. So that's a special craft depending for ages 0 to 14, which is basically our range. And then last not but least is Sheila Kerwin, who has been like my guiding angel. She's a poet. She's a early childhood education teacher, retired now. She does our We Steamers segment, which is a whole nother story, which she narrates that and sings and does STEAM for kids. And she also creates her own book list for that segment. And then she's a great supporter in helping me get the word out. They all are trying to help me share the good news. I'm just so blessed. And then we have the judges. The judges, I'm telling you, this is not a one-woman show. The judges help me out when it comes to deciding the video. And that is Barb Scanlon and Linda Dryhart. And again, Sheila is on that committee to judge the video. So in a nutshell, there you have it. Poems are on the website. Once a person registers, all they have to do is click and they can access those poems. They read them, they pick one, they make a video, they send it to me and maybe win $100. Win-win, right? One thing, the contest actually closes on April 30th, but they can still register over the summer, do it in the summer and submit it in fall when we're open again. Got all summer to do it. Keep them busy. Keep them out of trouble.
You heard it here, guys. You have time. And if you don't make it this year, you also have next year and the year following that as well. So we are urging everyone listening in to get involved, or if you can't do it yourself, try to share this so that Heidi's competition can reach other people too. So before we close, we would love to know what's bringing you joy right now in your work.
So one of my greatest joys is writing, especially STEAM poetry, both writing for books, writing for magazines, and sharing it in person in classrooms. I love to teach adults who are aspiring poets. I do have an online kind of a class. I'm especially interested in the contest because it's so fun to see what the students create. Looking ahead, I'm excited to feature more poems by acclaimed poets. Currently, we have two children's former poet laureates who have submitted poems and the other poems. So I'm looking forward to gathering new poems for Fresh Start in fall. And it's just a wonderful contest and I'm passionate about it. I guess you could tell. So I'm excited about a lot of things. There's a lot of good things. I got my fingers in a lot of pots, but it keeps me busy and I love it.
We are so appreciative of you coming on. And to all of our fellow storytellers, educators, and creators, keep writing, keep dreaming, and keep amplifying those voices for young readers everywhere. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review so we can keep growing in our community together.
My last words would be never give up. Never give up. Because it takes a lot.
If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this with a friend because we know that other people out there could use this too. And one last thing, if you like freebies, definitely join us in our email newsletter. Pop your email in, it's for free. We don't spam you, but we occasionally send things like career opportunities, awards and contests, and handy dandy things like pitch guides and query guides that you might find very useful. So otherwise, we will let you go today, and we'll see you again next time.